Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, a show where we discuss living as a leader worth following, leading others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for future generations. My name is Jimmie Gonzalez Jr., a learning and development professional and leadership coach, sitting down with my co-host Anthony Devon Watts Jr., an expert contact center leader that has effectively led and developed dynamic teams with high motivation. Together, we have over 30 years experience in the corporate game. Join us as we discuss our growth as leaders, share the lessons we've learned, and interview others to see how their leadership style was shaped as they were mentored by adversity.
Welcome back, Legacy Leaders. It is me, your co-host, Devon Watts, here with my good friend, Jimmie Gonzalez. How is it going, my friend? How are you doing, man?
It is going fantastic. I like that. Legacy Leaders. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I try to find like names for the communities.
Oh, yeah.
And I try to do it with Gabby's community. For those who don't know, the missus, she actually, has her own blog, and we've been doing that for about a year since we've been fortunate enough to have her work from home, and she wanted to find a community of mothers and, people to connect with. And so her vlog name is Mommy Gabs. So I try to address them as like, what's up, Mommy Gabbers? And she's not feeling it. So anytime I say that, she turns the camera off of me. She's like, nah, it's not gonna be. So hopefully you guys are more receptive to the name that I've kind of given for our community, Legacy Leaders. I think that's what
I like it. For. It fits. Yeah, it fits. But I'm doing well. I like the name. I'm doing well. I've had a good day so far. And somewhat of a long day, but a good day. Everything has been positive and been definitely thinking about this episode and kind of get into just to chop it up with you, man. It's a thing now, right? Like every week we're getting together and having these conversations and going through our process, and it's fun. So definitely one of the highlights of my day for sure.
Oh, absolutely, man. Same here. I think actually I recently sent out posted something up on our LinkedIn. And by the way, shout out all of our YouTube viewers, shout out our Spotify, Apple listeners, shout out our new LinkedIn community that we've been growing. But yeah, I posted something on LinkedIn that just said, find the fun in what you love. And we've obviously been passionate about leadership for a long, long time. And to go through this process has just been nothing but fun. So yeah, I absolutely look forward to it, man. Just getting on here and chopping it up and seeing what technology challenges we're going to run into or where the conversation is going to take us. It's been a good way to just kind of decompress for sure, man.
Yeah, I think the only challenges we had this evening was just me. It wasn't technology, but I haven't worked out in a week, man. I was doing really good. Working out with my barber, my friend, a good friend of mine, for 2 weeks at the gym, and they switched up the time. Long story short, that's going to end. So I didn't work out at all last week, and I was like, I have to do something. So got back on my heavy bag today. So I was very happy about that, and just showing myself I still got it, kind of like Mike Tyson, getting on a heavy bag.
That Legends League.
Yes, Legends League.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to seeing that actually, because I was obviously growing up, I was a Tyson fan. If you just kind of grew up during that time period and, the way that my father looked at him and we would watch all the fights. And so Tyson has always just kind of been a legend, a GOAT of an athlete and just person. And his personal story is amazing. But then as I got older and got into my teens and stuff like that, I really got into boxing and started watching Roy Jones because of his flair. I just liked just kind of his sauce and the fact that, this guy went from starting off as, I think, a middleweight actually, and then, ended up being heavyweight champion at one point and just to maintain his speed. And so now to see those two fighting is going to be super exciting. But I got to tell you, I did some preliminary, I see what Mike Tyson was doing. Let me scope out Roy. Roy don't look like he's been hitting it like Mike, so I'm a little concerned. I'm like, hey, Roy, you see these man's videos, right? This ain't Fat Mike no more. This Mike, in shape.
He's in shape. Mike. He's still powerful. When you just hear him hitting that bag, man, it's nasty. But yeah, Roy Jones, y'all must have forgot.
Yes.
We must have forgot he actually boxes. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Body headbangers. I remember that. So random.
But
But yeah,
supposedly
that's
they're not, within the contract, they're not trying to knock each other out, which, I think
just like a
for,
sparring session.
yeah, it's I just know that people are a little disappointed in that, because when we talk about Mike Tyson, he's like a knockout king, and the fact that he's not going to be trying to knock the other person out. But I don't know that it's not for charity. What's the word I'm looking for? Not it's
It's like
exhibition
an
fight. Yeah, it's
exhibition.
exhibition fight. So we'll see. But regardless, it'll be fun to watch anyway. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they evolve it too. Because I think they were also talking about like having Jordan, participate in the Legends League. So I don't know if it's just limited to one sport. I think they're just trying to take legends from each sport and do exhibitions like, okay, we're going to do a pickup basketball game or we're going to do football or something like that. So if they do that, they may actually have an avenue to do something
yeah,
interesting.
they are, because I saw like a 30-second commercial that Mike Tyson did, and that's exactly what he said. He didn't say Mike, but he was saying that they're going to be. It's not just boxing; it's going to be different sports. So we'll
Oh,
see.
that's going to be dope.
Yeah, we'll see what he does with it. I think he got enough pull to get some people off the couch and
For sure.
yeah, and doing some things. So that'd be cool to watch. But
Absolutely.
yeah, man, so again, good day. But there was just in the last conversation that we had, there was something that you said that really had me thinking about this story, and it was just something I wanted to share. You might have heard me tell this story before our listeners. I definitely wanted to share it with the legacy leaders out there. But it was something that you said that reminded me of this story. So the story goes, there were two lumberjacks, and they're starting off, at the beginning of their day, and they're ready to work, ready to get their axes and do what they need to do to start chopping down some trees. So both of them are going at it, and they're both pretty, competitive individuals, and they're doing their thing. They go all day, and they're working, and um, again, just chopping down trees, and one is counting how many trees he's actually cut down for the day, and um, other one's doing the same, and they're kind of watching each other and stuff like that. But, they're both focused on themselves and what they got to do in their job. So they go all day, and at the end of the day, they get back together, and they start comparing, kind of production for the day. And one was like, yeah, um, I feel pretty good about what I was able to do today. I cut down 5 trees. And the other one was like, okay, that's pretty good. I was actually really proud of myself today. I was able to cut down 10 trees. And the other guy was like, man, 10 trees. Like, I thought, the way that we were both going, and kind of the pace that we were both going, I really didn't think that you would have, kind of doubled, my production. Um, and they started talking about, kind of their efforts throughout the day. And, one of them was saying that, as I was going, like, I realized that as I'm chopping down these trees and I'm hustling and I'm working, I'm doing what I need to do. Like, I'm chopping down trees, and my saw was getting a little dull, but like I knew, and I kind of saw you off in the distance, and I just knew that I had to keep going and just keep swinging that axe, and chopping down those trees. So that was the individual that got the 5 right for the day. And the other guy said, yeah, I feel you. I see where you're coming from. Same thing happened to me, kind of midway through the day. Um, but I realized as my saw started to get dull, I stopped, and I took a minute to actually sharpen my saw. And when I did that and took that break in the middle of the day to sharpen my saw, it allowed me to be even that much more productive on the second half of the day. And honestly, I think, that was really the difference in me getting my 10 and you getting your 5, for the day. And the whole premise of sharpening your saw, again, in that story, was just on my mind, since our conversation last week. And you mentioned it a couple of times in the conversation, but for our legacy leaders, some of the folks out there maybe have never heard that concept of sharpening the saw. So, again, it made me think about that story. I wanted to share that with our listeners. I thought it would be a good idea for us to maybe to even unpack that a little bit more today, and get into really, as a leader, like, why it's so important for you to sharpen your saw.
No, man, I think that's honestly, I think it's a perfect place to start. Like when we start doing our deep dives, to really start with that. You're right. I didn't even think about it. I did bring it up a couple of times, maybe because that story's always resonated with me. Just the importance of making sure that you're able to deliver at the highest capacity that you can deliver at, and realizing that you have to make sure that your tool, your most important tool, which is you, right? Which is you, your mental well-being, the whole nine. It's always at its sharpest so that you can produce the highest output, because there is no shortage, and I know the rest of the leaders can relate to this. There's no shortage of a forest of things that you have to chop down and tackle as a leader on any given moment. And it definitely just seems like, it's never ending. And if you never take the time to actually make sure that you are sharp, your saw is sharp, eventually, you're gonna wear down. You're gonna be too dull to be productive at all. So, I like that quite a bit, man. We can start there and just really unpack that.
Yeah. So for me, really, this was a concept that I was introduced to. Man, when I think about it, just a blessing. This was like really early on in my career with Sears, and just really happy about overall. This is just kind of a sidebar, but just happy with the development that I've been able to receive over the years, and it kind of started with there. We went to a training for Franklin Covey, and it was Franklin Covey Achieving Your Highest Results, and that's when I was introduced to my planner, which I've been having since then. I've had different ones along the way, but that system has been something that I've stuck with the whole time. But within that system, because it's not just a planner, they really teach you about mission statement, your values and goals that you set for yourself. But the premise too is making sure that you sharpen your saw. And focusing on 4 different aspects, right? So the mental, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual part of yourself. And like you said, it's so important for a leader, because as leaders, we are teachers, we are influencers, whether we have a team or not. Again, because it's not about the position you have, but just being a leader in your own space, regardless of how many people there are. Like, you're always pouring yourself out into other people. If you really have those true marks of a leader, and humility and selflessness, and you're truly trying to be a servant. Again, you're working for other people, you're doing things for other people, you're looking to serve other people, and you're pouring yourself out. So that can get draining, at the end of the day, at the end of the week. And then if you have a family, obviously you're trying to do everything you can to give to your family and those that are around you, and your loved ones. So whether it's at work or even in your personal life, it's just making sure that you're taking care of yourself, so that you have enough for you and you have enough energy to continue to pour into other people. So it's really, again, those 4 aspects: the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And how you kind of plan things out throughout the week. But I think for today, we can just really talk about those 4 areas, and maybe give them some tips on things that we've done, to really focus on those different areas, and how that's helped us to continuously sharpen our saw, so that we're productive. We're still kind of light on our feet, so to speak, talking about boxing, and we have what we need to be able to be there for other people.
I like that. Actually, I think probably a good place to start is really unpacking the physical component, at least to start with, because I know we talked a little bit about you even acknowledging, man, I didn't work out last week,
Yeah.
so I got to get back into the flow of this. And then we ended up getting into talking about Tyson, which is not easy, hard to do at all.
Yeah.
I can talk about Tyson all the time, but from just like a physical perspective, I think let's just kind of start in there. What are some things that you would just give as tips to our listeners around the importance, first and foremost, of sharpening your saw from a physical perspective, and then how do you incorporate that into just kind of everything else that you got going on? Why is it so important to make sure that you're kind of taking care of your body?
Well, number one, I mean, it's your vessel, right? This is the body that we've been blessed with to do whatever it is, that we're called to do. It depends on where you're at. I mean, man, you've walked this walk with me for a long time, and health and fitness has been a big aspect of my life, and something that I focused on as well throughout my career, on trying to help other people improve, their physical fitness and their health overall. But physically, it's about the energy, right? How do I make sure that my body kind of as a machine is working at optimal performance so that I can do again the things that I've been called to do. So it really depends on where everybody is at in kind of in their walk as far as that physical activity is concerned. For me, it's making sure that I'm working out 3-4 times a week. Over the years, I've definitely mixed it up. I've been into, I don't want to say boxing, but on the heavy bag because it's two different things. I will definitely admit that. But really focusing on kind of the heavy bag workouts, for the last year or so, maybe even 2 years. Um, my neighbors, they are big cyclists. So that's something that I started doing recently as well. Again, just to kind of switch it up. And once or twice over the weekend, I'll go, on a 20-25 mile bike ride with them. So those are just different things, but it doesn't even have to be that extreme. It could be, all right, depending on again on where you're at, maybe you're living a very sedentary lifestyle right now. But from a physical perspective, I just want to start eating better. You know, I know I don't drink enough water. So I just want to make sure that this week, I'm going to drink, 8 cups of water, 8 glasses of water a day. Or, I'm going to take 10 minutes out the day to make sure that I go out and I go for a walk. Whatever it may be for you, that doesn't necessarily matter. Again, it depends on where you're at and your physical fitness and your journey from that perspective. But it's just doing something, picking something that's going to help you improve physically. And then as you progress, every week, every month, you can start to switch it up and add different things so that, physically you're starting to progress in that space.
I know for me, whenever I'm at, making sure that I'm on top of kind of my workout regimen and just kind of, staying true to that, keeping myself honest on it, I do feel a difference in my energy level, and just kind of my mindset for the day. And actually, kind of the real reason why I continue to make sure that I stay rooted from a physical perspective as a leader is not just for the fact that physically I want to be in the best shape possible that I can be. And I know, to your point, everybody's at different points in their walk from that perspective. So nobody's telling you guys that, hey, in order to take care of yourself physically as a leader, you need to be running marathons and be a triathlete. Like
Yeah.
I'm not even doing that. I have no desire to run distance like that. A good friend of ours, Richard Smith, though, he does run marathons. But again, it's really about just making sure that you're getting started and you're focusing on the things that keep your body at optimal shape, whether it is walking, running, eating. So I know that all of those things are important, but also for me, the real value that I see from maintaining the kind of my physical fitness is the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, which is more mentally, for me, like kind of that discipline because I haven't had a reason to work out in many many years since I left college and I'm not on a football team anymore, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing that I'm doing in the day that requires me to be in the type of shape that I used to be in, or the type of shape that I try to continue to maintain myself in, because I'm not putting on pads. I'm not trying to again make it as a professional athlete or anything like that. And so I know if I had the discipline to maintain that routine and maintain that regimen to stay on top of my physical fitness, when I have no real motive or real reason to do so,
Yeah.
and what does that mean for me exercising that discipline around the things that I am responsible for, that I do have a reason to be a good steward of? And so for me, it's just always that good exercise to just kind of make sure that my discipline stays at maximum level. Because if I can cut the corners around that, I may end up cutting some other corners, as a leader and as a professional that I don't want to. I can't afford to.
Yeah, the mental game is a huge part of that. But knowing your why, I think that's important too. I mean, yeah, maybe we're not trying to, we're not playing football. I'm not really like doing CrossFit competitions anymore and stuff like that. But one of the main things that, for our listeners that don't know, there was a point in my life where I had gotten to 260 pounds, and it just wasn't healthy for me. But my kids, man, like my kids, they were very young at the time, and just thinking about their future and wanting longevity in my life, were really that driving force at that point, to really start losing weight and kind of get healthy again. And but even now, like I want to be healthy for my kids, God willing, for my grandkids in the future. And so those are the things that still drive me today to at least want to keep that physical activity going. And we talked about with Xavier as well, like working out with the spouse and stuff like that. I mean, those things are just cool too. There's just a lot of aspects that you can add to it that makes that type of lifestyle even that much more enjoyable. But the discipline is super important, and then the energy, your energy levels and keeping those high, I think are two really important things that you would be able to benefit from focusing on your physical being on a daily and on a weekly basis.
I guess the kind of the last thing I'll say about it too before we move on to kind of one of the other areas. Um, I can't help but also just kind of listening to you and just really kind of marinate on the importance of just the physical component, to draw parallels between kind of physical fitness and working out and just leadership in general. And what I mean by that is, like, I very much look at leadership and your leadership skill set as a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you don't leverage it properly, if you don't use it, it atrophies. Right? And anybody that's going through that journey of just kind of building out muscle or putting on weight or getting stronger, you also know that kind of the best way to increase your strength and stretch beyond your current muscles capacity is, to have a spotter, to have a partner, an accountability partner. And, from a leadership perspective, having somebody who can spot you, who can be an accountability partner, who can give you support while you're stretching yourself beyond your normal capabilities. And then lastly, when you're just thinking about the process for, growing physically, right, and working out, is anybody that's been doing this for a while will tell you the most important components really are the nutrition and resting.
Yep.
Right. And so going back to the parallel between leadership, from a nutrition perspective as a leader, like, what are you feeding yourself? What are the things that
Mm-hmm.
you're consuming? What are the things you're reading? What are the things you're surrounding yourself with? And then from a rest perspective, it's exactly what we've been talking about sharpening your saw. Um, about making sure that you take time to step away from whatever leadership activity you're currently involved in, and decompress, de-stress, and allow your leadership muscle to recover. And so, these things about, prioritizing your physical, your mental, your emotional, your spiritual, fitness, to make sure that you're at your sharpest, it really comes down to, giving yourself the much needed mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional rest, so
Mm-hmm.
that you can recover as a leader, and then you're able to perform at your highest level. Um, and so, yeah, just kind of listening and thinking through that, I can definitely see the parallels and why it's so important to make sure that your physical fitness is at top shape.
Yeah. The that discipline, man, that just, it affects, so many aspects of your life. And like you said, if I'm gonna cut corners, here, I might cut corners someplace else. And as a leader, there's no space for that, and you want to do your best to lead by example in your home. You want to do your best to lead by example in the workplace. And like you said, it is about feeding yourself and taking care of yourself, that perspective. And like you said, even from a physical perspective, maybe what you need to do is just get some rest. Maybe you've been drinking way too much coffee and caffeine, and you need to get off of the caffeine for a little bit, and kind of detox. Maybe it's like, what, I'm going to make sure that I'm getting at least 7 hours of sleep, every night, maybe 4 nights out of the week, all of those things. And we'll kind of segue that into the mental. There's some mental benefits from that too, but definitely from a physical perspective, like, your body needs to rest, so rest is very important for recovery, and just to make sure that mentally you're sharp, right, to be able to do what you need to do. um, so yeah, the discipline that you mentioned also kind of had me thinking about the mental component, and how important that is. um, And that really, again, that's a good segue because when you mention reading, like mentally, that's one of the things that you can do to sharpen yourself mentally is read. Just read books. Um, maybe you like to read books, maybe you like to watch videos on YouTube or listen to podcasts to feed yourself and gain knowledge. Maybe you like to watch National Geographic or the History Channel. Whatever those things may be, but feeding yourself to sharpen yourself mentally. um, I remember, you know, again, several years ago, one of the things that was an opportunity for me kind of early on in my career, because I was so much, we talked about disc, so much of a D type personality and making decisions way too fast. I just realized that my strategy was lacking a little bit. So from that mental component, I'm like, you know what? I need to learn how to play chess. And went through, this series of activities of studying, reading, learning how to play chess, and then playing chess with my neighbor, playing chess with Madrid coworker. Both of them beat me badly every single time. Um, but those were things that I did to, again, to sharpen myself mentally, and to help me improve in those areas. So, what are some things that you've done in the past to help you sharpen yourself mentally?
So some of the things you mentioned, like watching videos for sure, reading books, are things kind of high up on my checklist of things I like to do to keep myself sharp mentally. Um, you know, uh, Watching the History Channel, right? So
That's why I mentioned that one.
yeah, like watching the History Channel, like I'm a huge history buff, and so I'm fascinated, by the thought process that, or by the fact that these fallible human beings, could make these decisions that they're like the choices that they make just echo across history and into
Mm,
years. And so I love like watching that and just hearing the thought process and hearing what they were dealing with and hearing how flawed they were, but also hearing how there was strength in the fact that they were flawed and their humanity. So watching the History Channel is definitely something for me that I like to do. But to be honest with you, sometimes it's not even that heavy or that serious. Sometimes it's just playing board games or
hmm
hopping on the video game, with my oldest. And one of the you talk about just one of the opportunities that you've had from a strategy perspective early on in your career that you've been able to shore up. One of the opportunities that I've kind of consistently had. Even before I got into the professional space was just being able to quiet my mind.
mm,
My mind is always just running a million miles a minute. That's part of the reason why the word that you passed on to me about, hey, it's not time to make a decision until it's time to make a decision resonates so much because my mind is always, all right, process. All right, this happens and this happens and that happens and this happens, but if that doesn't happen, then this needs to happen. And I'm just always going. And so when I find opportunities to dive into a book, to dive into something that I like to watch, play video games or board games or just something like that, it gives me the space I need to quiet my mind, and my mind stops working on whatever problem was going on. Or
yeah.
maybe it's it just doesn't have the problem in the forefront, and it's in the back. But still, I don't kind of have those thoughts running. Um, and I've even, I've done things like meditating. Meditating has been something that's been pretty helpful for me. I'm actually, anybody that has ever experienced this before, I went to a sensory deprivation
hmm
um, room, and so that was pretty dope. Like to get in kind of the pod, and if anybody's like watched like Dragon Ball Z, I felt like Vegeta, like a Super Saiyan or something, getting into this pod, and the fact that they have the water at the same temperature as your body, and there's no sound, there's no light. And then you're floating. It's saline water, so you're floating, so you're not touching the bottom, and so you can't tell where your body stops and the water starts. And so it's the it's the only time, at least for me, because it's my first time, right? But for most people, their first time is the only time your body has ever experienced a lack of sensation on all senses since you were in the womb, right?
mm,
So like when you were floating in the amniotic fluid and all that good stuff. And I'm not Doogie Howser, by any stretch of the imagination, but I know a little bit something about anatomy. But yeah, so and just going through that, I gotta be honest with you guys. It was transformational for me in the sense that like I literally like I felt like I just like immense quiet. Like I can't describe it any other way. Like just complete silence of the mind, and there was no external senses or anything like that. And so I was able to just kind of center myself, and that was also super helpful for me. Um, but yeah, like to your point, it is important to make sure that you are doing things to invest in yourself mentally or give yourself a mental rest and a mental break. And I think part of the issue that a lot of us leaders experience is that's probably the muscle that gets worked the most
Yep.
because we just stew on these things. And I understand why is because we have a desire to make the right decision, to be good stewards, to think through all the angles, especially as you just continue to grow in the space, and you understand the seriousness of the decisions you're making, the impact it
The
has on
impact, yeah.
people's lives. Like you're constantly stewing on those things, and it's hard to escape it. But I can tell you 10 out of 10 times when I've had to make some of the most impactful decisions, as a leader, that I knew was going to have tangible impacts to people, to their family, to the whole nine. Giving myself that space to just rest mentally allowed me to make a way more effective decision. I know that for a fact because I know where I was leaning before I took that break. And again, just that word, hey, it's not time to make a decision yet. You need to give this a break. Like your mind's been, chewing on this for about, 3-4 days. Just shut up. Find something to shut you up mentally. And I take that break. I find something. And then after I come out of that, there's just a different level of clarity, or maybe something I didn't even think about that comes to the forefront, and I'm able to make a better decision because of it. And so, I think the mental component is critical to make sure that you're staying sharp there. That's one of the most valuable tools you have as a leader, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you got to continue to stay sharp mentally. You took the words out of my mouth when you started mentioning the meditation piece. And that's something that actually has been on my mind recently because that's a discipline that I've gotten away from, and I just know the benefit that it has for me is just that meditation. When I've kind of done my research on that too, they say probably 20 minutes is kind of like a sweet spot, but you just have to work within your schedule, right? And maybe it's just 5 minutes, but 5 minutes is better than nothing. And for me, that was a thing that I was able to use to quiet my mind. Like you said, there's just so many things racing. And as a leader, like you're a problem solver, right? So there's problems and you're trying to think about the solutions. And like you said, not just the next step, because again, this is chess, this is not checkers. You think about step 2, step 3, step 4, and what are all of the different components and consequences and unintended consequences. And you're thinking about all these things, and it's very challenging to quiet your mind. So it's a mental activity, and it's not just even at the beginning of the day, but there's been times where we're about to get on a conference call or I'm about to do a presentation, and I go through a minute or 2 minute activity again to kind of quiet my mind, to slow my heart rate a little bit, just to make sure that you're not nervous or anything, and kind of calm yourself, and then get into to the task and what you have to do. Your breathing, helps, which is physical, but it definitely helps that mental aspect too. When you kind of work on some breathing techniques, again, to slow your heart rate and mentally just clear yourself and get you ready for the mission and what you're about to get after.
Yeah, for sure, man. Actually, now that you're talking about meditation, I think one of the things that can also be helpful, and maybe it's not true meditation, but it's back to like quieting your mind and just being in the moment. Whenever you break bread with your family, like when you have the opportunity to kind of spend that time, like, or, around the table, or, at the fast food restaurant or wherever you guys are eating at. For me, that's one of the things that I've tried to be cognizant of and just plug in, because I know again, if I'm sitting at that table with the missus, with the boys, and we're supposed to be eating, but mentally I'm checked out because I'm still stewing on this problem and like I'm just going through the motions of having dinner. Um, One, they see that, right? They see that, and then that just makes them feel like, well, damn, like you're disengaged here. Like we're, give us a little bit of time, right? And they're deserving of that and more. But also for me, I still don't get that break. And from for me personally, one of the best forms of rejuvenation, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Um, in those areas is the time with my family, is
Hmm.
being goofy with the missus or hearing the boys laugh and them act up and talking about their day and whatever crazy ideas they got. And, let me see what question Gio's going to have for me now. What other extinct animals he going to want to know about, the facts on, and those things. Again, getting away from some of that heavier, weightier decisions that I've been, kind of marinating on for, 3, 4, 5 days in certain situations, and then just appreciating the now, the moment, this moment with my family. That the reason why that became so important is actually something that you shared with me, which was when your BKs, your big kids were growing up,
Yeah.
right? You hit a point where you realize like, man, I only got
X
four
amount of
more,
summers.
yeah, 4 more summers, right, with Christian. And so that's always something that's just kind of resonated with me. Like Gio's about to turn 8, right? So um, like I got 10. I got 10 summers. Like 10 summers is in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. And so I won't get these moments back,
Mm.
and so I need to take advantage of them now. And through that, I give myself the mental reprieve, the rejuvenation, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, um, to go and tackle whatever I need to tackle after that.
Yeah, that's as thinking about being a true leader, a breakthrough leader. Two things: it's being in the moment, and also thinking about like who are you, like what's the person that you want to be, right? So two aspects. You just mentioned your family, so I'll get back to that in a second, but also in the workplace, like there's so many things going on, right? And you might be frustrated about something, or you're trying to figure something out and maybe you haven't gotten quite there yet, but then at the at the top of the hour you're going to have to go talk to your team, or you're about to go into another meeting with a different group of people. And it's that mental exercise of, before I actually step through that door, thinking about like, who do I want to be in this moment? You know what I mean? And not that you're trying to be somebody else, but you want to be like, I want to be somebody who's fully engaged. I want to be somebody who is going to bring a positive energy, to the room when I walk in there. Thinking about those things, and then boom, you walk in and you start doing that, right? Um, from a family perspective as well, is, again, you may have had a challenging day. um, I know a lot of us are not necessarily traveling these days, but whether you're just getting home and before you get home, or if you're at your desk space, before you say, okay, I'm going to leave the workspace and then go engage my family, let me decompress a little bit, let me put all those things aside, let me get my mind in the right place to be fully engaged, with my family. And it just means so much, even if they don't necessarily understand what you're doing. They know and they see it, they observe it, and they definitely appreciate that. um, so my wife, this was like last week, man. She was just in the kitchen cooking, and I'm in that moment. I'm just appreciating my wife and what she's doing. And I had my phone. I'm like, you know what? No, like, let me put the phone down and let me just gaze. But she's like, "Why you looking like that? You looking all crazy right now." I don't know what kind of face I had on, but
Why
really,
you
it
acting
was.
weird?
But it was really just, again, me taking a moment to kind of soak in my life, and be grateful in that moment, and say, you know what? Yeah, I can be sitting here on my phone, but let me put that down and mentally be engaged and have a conversation, and like, let's listen to some jazz music, and how can I help you? And again, just really be engaged at that moment mentally. Those are activities that are going to help strengthen you in those circumstances. All of those things make you feel better because the people around you feel better. Again, the energy is just at a much higher level, at a much more positive level. And all of those things, while you're not doing it for yourself, there's still, that you still get it back, you know what I mean, in return. And that's one of the most challenging things that I think people have with this concept of sharpening the saw, especially moms. Because moms are so selfless and they give up so much for their family. And it's like, well, I have to do all of these things. I don't want to say have to, but they just know, like, this is who I am, and I got to make sure that I'm taking care of my family. And like, I don't have time to work out, or I don't have time to eat healthy, or whatever it may be for them. I don't have time to have a hobby and to do these things. Um, I would still say for all of us, right? It's not that you don't necessarily have time; it's that you make time for those things. But how important it is that you're not being selfish in those moments. Like, by you doing something to take care of yourself, again, you're actually feeding yourself, and you're sharpening your saw so that you can be that much better for your family as a leader, so you can be that much better and more effective for the people that you're entrusted with and the people that you're looking to serve on a daily basis. Again, whether that's in the home, in the boardroom, in the office space, wherever it is that you're at. Man, physically, mentally, those things are just, it's so important to realize that, again, it's not a selfish thing. You need to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others.
Agreed, man. Agreed. Especially now, just because you touched on this, like we're not traveling like we used to, right? Like the nature of our routine has
Mm,
changed as a result of this, right? So where we used to have, um, at one point, when I was living in Winter Springs, going to Lake Mary, and then even when I moved out to Sanford, there was probably between 15 to 30 minute commute, right? And so that gave me the space to kind of decompress mentally, turn up my music, you know what I mean, just do my thing, just kind of check out, maybe, so that by the time I got home, I had already kind of gone through that transition of decompressing, and then I was just the best version of myself at that time, for the household. Well, now we don't have the commute. The commute is
mhm,
like 20 seconds from the office to the kitchen. You know what I mean? Like as soon as you open the door. And so the other challenge for our listeners in kind of this new space is finding your commute now, like finding that commute, or finding that way to transition from the work to the home, right, to decompress, because right now
mhm.
the lines are blurred. The lines literally are blurred. There's times where I'm in meetings. I finish a meeting. I get up. Oh, it's time to feed Linux lunch. All right, let me see if I can help out and get his lunch created. Together, so that the missus doesn't have to worry about it, right? And then, oh, okay, I got to go prep for another meeting. Then I'm right back into the meeting mode, and so because we don't have those things that we used to have, the commutes, or I would leave the office, and then, okay, I'm gonna leave the office. I'm gonna go to the gym because I already packed my gym stuff, and then I'll work out, and then that'll be my decompress, and then I go home. Like, we don't have that. Everything is just happening right now within these four walls. Um, yeah, you got to be able to find that commute, find your transition, so that you can again sharpen yourself physically, mentally, to be the best person that you can be.
Yeah, it's about making those adjustments, right? I mean, we're a little past kind of halftime of the year, but when you talk about sports, you go into halftime and you start making adjustments. And I think for some of us, we were still just trying to catch up and think about, how do I live in this world? And I think for a lot of us too, we were hoping that by now, we would be on the other end of COVID-19 and everything that's going on. And that's just not the case, especially here in Florida, right? So as this continues to prolong for us, I have to think about and do that self inventory and say, okay, this is how I was living my life prior. Have I really stopped to think about, what was I doing that I'm not doing anymore that was healthy for me, and what adjustments do I need to make, right? Because I kind of caught myself just sleeping a little bit later when I was always waking up at a certain time, because I would wake up, do what I need to do, have my quiet time, take my daughter to school, and then go to work. Where those things don't happen anymore, right? So I just think it's important for us to, again, to do that self inventory and make adjustments. I think is what you're getting at.
Yeah, I like that. I like the adjustments. The we're past halftime analogy. Like,
Hmm.
I ain't gonna lie, coach. They had us in the first half. But yeah, hopefully you guys are adjusting your game plan. For the second half and the new norm. I mean, this is probably the state that we're going to be in, at least for the balance of the year. And so
Hmm.
we need to make those adjustments so that we can take care of ourselves.
Yeah,
Well
I
said.
know your
Well said.
company, our company, a lot of companies that said, hey, we're going to do this work from home at least for the remainder of 2020. So we definitely have to make sure we make those adjustments and keep moving. Um, so there's four different aspects so far. We talked about the physical, the mental. What about the emotional? Um, yeah, it's very important. Again, all of these aspects are important. One point that I do want to make as well is that it's when you're really kind of you have all cylinders going is when you're making sure that you're focusing on each one of these every week. Maybe it's not every day, but I'm intentionally saying, okay, what am I going to do from a physical perspective, from a mental perspective, and now from an emotional perspective to work on this week. So again, I'm continuously sharpening my saw.
Hmm. So from an emotional perspective, I actually there I get the benefit of, one, us having kind of this opportunity to connect. You know what I mean? So there's times where I'm able to reach out to you and just, before we even cut on the cameras and we're chopping it up for the legacy leaders.
Yes.
We're just chopping it up ourselves and just, either expressing frustration or whatever we're going through, and seeking not only just a sympathetic or empathetic ear, but also counsel,
Hmm.
counsel as well, and being able to, have somebody that can give you a different perspective on what you're dealing with. Obviously, I get that with chopping it up with you. I get that with chopping it up with my pops. And obviously the missus, she, from time to time, she definitely plays, therapist for me. When I'm like, hey, I'm, sit down on the couch, lay my head on her lap, and I just start talking. Like, I'll just pick up
Mm.
in the middle of like whatever the hell I'm dealing with, right? And be like, yeah, man, I'm da 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 da, and she's like, oh, okay, you're talking to me now. Let me listen. Um, but you know, I can say for me personally, I always benefited from the fact that my father, very early on, he was just always intentional about making sure that, from an emotional perspective, that whatever I was feeling, was validated. Yeah, I had a space to be able to kind of confide in and to talk to him. I think largely because, again, um, he knew what was an absence in his life, and so he wanted to ensure that that didn't exist for his kids. And so I've been the recipient of that, the beneficiary of that.
Hmm.
And so that just has put me in probably a better emotional space, than most males. Period. Um, and of course, that's something that I've carried with myself and make sure that I do for my boys, and just doing affirmation. One of the things I actually like to do, when I put man to bed is, I'll do bedtime affirmations. Right, I'll just lay him, like, when I lay him down, I'm just holding his hand and I'm just telling him, like, you're so smart, you're creative, you're funny. I love you. We're so proud of you. And of course, he's a year and a half, so it's just dad, no. And today, actually, I was getting a kick out of it. I was telling Gabriella today, he was actually, it felt like he was following what I was spitting, and he was like affirming it too. So I was like, "You're so smart." He's like, "Yeah." I was like, you're so funny." Yeah. Uh, but again, just kind of all of those things, a combination of those things, really help to continue to keep me sharp and feed me emotionally. Because yeah, man, there's definitely an emotional toll that comes with just leading, just being in the space. Like, um, again, I can think of plenty of times where, you feel the weight of those decisions, and you know that the decisions you're making are impacting people's families, and if you've built the level of rapport that you should be building as a leader, you also understand that, like, this is not just a decision that impacts their family, arbitrarily, but like specifically, I know what's going on in their lives. I know what they're
Yeah.
dealing with, and so how do I either solution for that so that these individuals are not impacted? Maybe there's something else I'm not thinking about that I can bring to the table, and if that's not the case, then okay, well, how do I, when I'm delivering this news, be able to speak to that and be able to take the hat off of, okay, this is the business communication, but let me push that to the side now, because I also know what's going on with you personally, and I want to connect with you emotionally. I want to be able to talk to you about those things and talk through those things. And Yeah. So again, staying sharp emotionally is critically important, because otherwise, what happens is you repress those things, and then they manifest themselves in unintended ways. You hit that point where you know all your stressors have been maxed out, and the straw has broke the camel's back, and next thing you know, you spazzing out on somebody that you don't need to be spazzing out on, and it's not, and it doesn't even, it has nothing to do with them. It is a projection onto them or the situation from other things that you've just been repressing and just pent up. And so you have an obligation as a leader. You owe it to yourself to stay sharp in that space. And I would just say, from my experiences, I don't know if you feel, you've observed the same way or felt the same way, but I feel like that's honestly an area as men in leadership that we tend to see people struggling. Like I tend to see people struggling is that they don't work through those emotional things, and then they have these situations, and then I can think of a couple people where I've had to do coaching discussions around how they handle the situation, how they communicate, how they let their emotions get out of whack. And through those discussions, I find out, well, it's because of all these other emotional things that they're dealing with that they've never processed, and now it's manifested itself, and you've impacted a relationship. And this could have all been avoided, and you could have been in a better place mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, if you would have dealt with some of these emotional issues.
Mm-hmm. One thing, the word that I thought about, when you were talking about, kind of laying on the misses and expressing things, is vulnerability. And as men, two men here talking, like, it's for people in general, but for us, it is just very important to, and as a leader, to be vulnerable with the people that are closest to you and at the workplace. The other thing I was thinking about is you're right about how emotionally connected or taxing it could be in the workplace if you're doing it right. I think if you're really being vulnerable in those situations, and you're letting people in, and when I say letting people in, it doesn't mean that you have to let them into your personal life, but really let them in to know you and know who you are and what makes you tick. And like you said, you're building relationships. We, for so many years, we've talked about, yeah, I spend more time with you guys than I do with my own family. And that really truly is the case. You spend so much time with these people at work, and you build those relationships, and you do learn about their families and their kids and the spouses and what's going on. And those things in a positive way get intertwined. But yes, it definitely can be taxing on the individual. Um, and I think it's important for a leader, we talk about IQ, right? And the intelligence of an individual, but really what we're referring to now is that EQ, emotional intelligence. And how do I put myself in a place where I'm working on myself emotionally so that I'm in a healthy spot, but also in doing so, I'm even that much more observant to where other people are at emotionally. And I have a very high emotional IQ. And in the workplace these days, that is almost as important, not almost, it is as important, if not even more at times, to have that than to say, oh, I have a very high IQ. Because especially these days, as generations, have changed and people change, like, people want realness and they want connection in life. And if you just have a low EQ and you don't know how to connect, you're not observant with people at all, it can just have a negative impact on your ability to influence people. I've told you this story. One of the people that we've worked with, that I feel has a very high emotional intelligence, Queen Bee, Shayla, and I remember that moment that, we were leaving the office together one night and we're having a conversation, and I don't remember the specific topic, but I know I was a little hot. And me emotionally, I can go 0 to 100 real quick sometimes. And, so I'm kind of just venting with her and telling her some things. And, um, we're having a conversation, and it's getting dark, and it's like, it's time to go, right? So she says some things about about my family, and she just said some things, to not knowing it at the time, but she said some things to kind of put me at ease, right? And then we said goodnight, and obviously she went her way, I went home, and but it was like the next day or a couple of days later, we kind of somehow we got back into talking about that moment, and she was just saying, hey, like, I realized where you were at, but like, I knew you were about to go home to see your family, and I didn't want you in that space. So I said some things, and she got me away from thinking about those things so that I can be in that better spot. And like, I was just so blown away with how she was thinking in that way in that moment. And I want to be like you. Like that's just I mean, she has so many other great qualities, but it's like that is high emotional intelligence. But as a leader, man, that's what makes people so special when you can see those things and again realize that it's not just about the workplace, but it's also about that personal thing. And how can I help this person get into a better spot so that when they go home to their family, they're not thinking about all these things and they can be fully engaged and they can be, who they're supposed to be for their wife, for their kids in that moment. So it can get really deep from that perspective. But I also want to kind of give some really simple kind of tactics or things that you can do. Maybe it's you just need to smile more. From an emotional perspective, maybe you just need to smile more at people on a daily basis. Maybe like you need to literally just kind of stop and smell the roses, and take moments to be kind to people. If that's not that you're a mean person, but some of us, we're all wired differently, and you have to be a little bit more intentional about doing certain things. So again, we can talk about some bigger concepts like emotional intelligence, but again, sometimes it's just as simple as when I walk by people today, I'm just going to say hi and smile at them, even if they say nothing back. It's all good, you know what I mean. But I'm going to make sure that every person I walk by or that I speak to, on virtually on Zoom or whatever it is that you're using, I remember to smile and turn on my camera so that I'm having some type of positive emotional impact on the other people. And again, in doing so, things tend to go better for me. And you see that reciprocated in so many different ways.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's funny you actually, you bring up Shayla because when I was meeting with my squad earlier today, and I was just breaking down a couple of different things. I'm in our team meeting talking about leading through change, and I was really getting into how it's important to understand and to be anchored in the impact of the people. I think we spend a lot of time as leaders focusing on, kind of the sexy process and reporting and this is going to be awesome. It's going to do this and flip this and do all that stuff, right? And I know that because I've been guilty of it myself. I talked about the fact that Shayla, as just a leader, as a partner, as a peer, is always good at keeping you anchored in the people component and the
Mm-hmm.
impact on the people perspective. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. She is definitely somebody I hold up there as that standard of emotional intelligence to aspire to. And there's been plenty of times where, after working together over many, many years as peers, and then, her reporting to me and so on and so forth, is we've both been able to, kind of have that emotional outburst, within the safety of,
Mm.
just kind of each other so that we could, okay, tell me what you're dealing with. Yeah. Okay. You're frustrated. All right. Let's talk about that. Let's work through it and work through that just emotional aspect of it. And a lot of times the thing that gets us caught up, even as leaders, is getting in the way of us getting to the solution. Because, I think having seen it enough and, done things, you have some things you can pull from a solution perspective, but sometimes the emotion of the situation is blocking you from even looking beyond that to see, okay, well, I know what the solution is at the end of the day. Like sometimes I just want to be in my feelings. I know you remember that,
Yeah.
as years ago, even when I was a team manager, we used to have a little bit of an accountability system where we felt like somebody was just being in their feelings, like this is you, this is your feelings, right? And that's where you're living, right? And sometimes it's just good to get confronted with that because you're like, damn, you're right. All right, let me work through these feelings, let me work through these emotions. Because we're not robots, man. We're not
Yeah.
robots. We're humans, and that people need to be able to see the humanity in you as a leader. I think is what you're really getting after, and understanding that, again, more important than what you know, it's the impact that you leave on people. It's how people feel in your presence and feel about their interactions with you that mean the most. Because I have individuals that I still interact with today that like still reach out to me, that still want to know what's going on with me and my family and the whole nine. Not because they were impressed with how I navigated managing the project 7 years ago for a new CRM system. Like that's not it at all.
Mm-hmm.
They remember the conversations that we had around family, around what my values, around, just what we were dealing with emotionally. And when they were frustrated, like, I was just there to listen. And it's those things that have them, 6, 7, 8 years from, later, still reaching out and still caring and wanting to know what's going on, and vice versa. I have individuals like that for me too. It's
Yeah.
like, I remember the empathy and just the ear that you lent in that moment. And so, like, you're always on my list of people to check in on and want to make sure that you're doing well. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's sometimes you don't even realize the impact that you have on people. But it is cool, like you said, when they're still looking for you and they just still want that connection. You know what I mean? And it's a real genuine connection to they care because they knew that you did and you still do care. You know what I mean? So um yeah, emotional intelligence. So we've broken down the mental, the physical, the emotional aspect of sharpening the saw. Last is the spiritual components. Um, for me, overall, um, especially the physical and the spiritual, it kind of goes hand in hand. Like if I'm not on point, and it really all gets back to discipline, but like if I'm not on point with the physical aspect of my life and working out and doing those type of things, like that kind of bleeds into the things that I do to strengthen myself spiritually, and sometimes even vice versa. You know what I mean? So I have to make sure again I'm doing those self assessments and checking my daily activities and that I'm keeping to those disciplines. Because again, for me, it always just intertwines so much. Um, but what I would say, for me spiritually, and this is going to be different for for people depending on where you're at, and I just think that for me, prayer is big. It's definitely something that again when I'm missing a consistent and dedicated, prayer time, like I know it, I can feel it, I can see it kind of manifest itself in different ways. Being in the Word, man, and just reading through Scripture, those are things that for me definitely help, to make sure that spiritually I'm in a right place. And we touched upon it, when we were talking to Xavier again, just the importance of that vertical relationship. And if I'm not on point doing the things that I need to do to continue to grow and cultivate that vertical relationship that I have with the Lord, then all of my other horizontal relationships, they might not be horrible, but again, they're definitely not going to be all that they can be and all that they probably should be if I'm not focusing on those things. Um, so yeah, man. So those are a couple of things that I tend to make sure that I'm focusing on to ensure that the spiritual part of myself that I'm sharpening the saw in that aspect too.
yeah, absolutely. I'm in the same boat. Prayer, meditation,
Hmm.
being in the Word. Um, attending service. That's something that, especially with us kind of making the transition, and, things being shut down, right? Like, everything is virtual now.
Hmm.
And so, just making sure that, again, I'm exposing myself, and, again, I'm keeping myself rooted in the Word and hearing the right message. And, I'm feeding myself spiritually. Like, that's is critically important to me, just kind of what you touched on, from a discipline perspective, right? Because that really is um, that foundation for everything else. Um,
Yeah.
so if I'm centered, if I'm right, again, if I'm vertical, and that foundation is taken care of, then I can build everything else on that. And that, from just a spiritual perspective, it feeds kind of that patience, the patience that I need, in order to handle things emotionally, the patience that I need in order to to exercise the right discipline, and the patience that I need in order to handle things mentally, right? And so, whether it's, Jesus take the wheel, or Lord give me strength, whatever it is, again, it just helps for me. Right, and so I think, to your point, it is going to be different for everybody, depending on where you're currently at or what you currently
Yeah.
believe. Whether you do believe in a higher power, you believe in just the kind of the connected spirituality of humanity and people, right? But again, it's just being rooted in that, being rooted in humanity, being rooted in love and empathy and all of those
Hmm.
things. Um, you know, is critically important. I think for a lot of folks just like me, it does really kind of establish that foundation and allow that grace, allow that patience that you need to handle everything else when you're coming up short. That's the thing that covers me down. You know what I mean? Like if I don't really got it from an emotional perspective, well, at least I got this grace to cover me down and keep me honest. And be like, hold up, you ain't got it right now. Like
Yeah.
let me step in and help you out here. So.
For our legacy leaders that are listening and maybe not watching this on YouTube, like I'm just sitting here dying, but in my mind, I'm thinking about conversations that we've had, like in your office, and kind of describing what you want to do to people. I'm like, Lord, thank you for holding me down.
Yeah, legit. And especially because if you like you're on point with the physical component, and so like you start like moving some weight around, right? Like I'm about to bench press them. Like how much they can't weigh more than about $185. I was just throwing 230.
I got that all day, all day. But like, no, like you said, Jesus, take the wheel. No, I can't do that.
I need to think differently,
That would be wrong.
I'd be wrong for that. So you're right. Let me just process this.
But that's real talk, man. That is real talk on how, again, being centered spiritually, it helps in all of those other components as well. And um thankful thankful for the patience. It is a virtue. But I don't naturally have that. You know what I mean? So I need a good Lord to help me in that aspect, and to help me with patience and understanding. I think all of those things are important for a leader to exemplify those things. Um, and even if as a leader, it's not something that maybe you speak about a lot with your team or the people that are around you in the workplace, they're still going to reap the benefits of you being centered and doing what you need to do to make sure that, again, you're sharpening your saw from a spiritual perspective as well. Um, so yeah, man. So again, physical, mental, emotional, spiritually. I just encourage everybody that's with us right now, listening, that you know, be intentional about doing something every week, and then kind of establishing that cadence for yourself, establishing that bar, and then say, okay, and create habits, right? They say it takes 21 days, maybe 21, 30 days, but again, to the most basic stuff, if it's I need to smile more, or I need to drink 8 cups of water a day, let me continue to do those things on a daily and a weekly basis until I don't have to be intentional, because now they're just a habit and they're a part of my life, right? So now I've kind of, gotten to another level from that perspective. And now I start working on something else that will continuously sharpen myself in those different aspects. Um, but, I think at times too, depending on where you're at in life, maybe you give a little bit more to one than other, depending on the scenario. Like you kind of make those adjustments, but every week you should be doing something, again, no matter how big or how small it may be, to be intentional about those 4 aspects of your person, of your being, of your life.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you touched on that I just want to, kind of, magnify just a bit, right,
Mhm.
is, you talked about just making sure that you're doing something, like the importance of just taking action, no matter how big or how small. And I think for us as leaders, I should be able to resonate with a lot of folks that are listening because, um, at some point, you finally made the decision to pursue, a career in leadership and kind of go down this path. Well, like you had to make the decision to start doing something, right? Like when you say, you know what, I'm going to leverage this influence, and I'm going to use this, given skill set and ability to, drive results and be there for people and support. Like there was a moment where you said, well, I got to do at least something, no matter how big it is, whether it's as simple as, oh, that person has their hand up, and they're looking for help. Like, let me go help them. Like
Yeah.
it's not my responsibility, but that's the smallest thing I can do, right? Let me just go and try and help them. Let me ask who they need help. And then that, obviously that one decision of just doing something small, you know, kind of like a pebble in a pond, right? Those ripples
The
just
ripple
became,
effect. Yeah.
yeah, it just became something huge as a leader for a lot of you folks that are listening. And so again, when we go back to, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, if you're not doing these things today to sharpen your saw, and I get that maybe some of the things that we've been breaking down and talking about, they seem like monumental tasks. Like, when am I having time to do this? And they talking about, lifting weights and running and, all this stuff. Like, I got a shake weight that I don't even use. Now they talking about, nutrition, and my advice would be to you, like, don't try to eat the elephant in one bite. Just start with something small. Even if it's, I'm going to make sure that I'm well hydrated. Like, that's a win physically.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a win physically. Like,
but that affects you mentally. There's so many, different, positive aspects of just making sure that you're hydrated on a consistent basis.
Absolutely. Or I'm going to read an article. I'm going to read an article online, something small, right? Again, that's a win from a mental perspective. I'm going to take the time to, kind of talk with a good friend just about a situation that frustrated me, right? Instead of just processing it myself. That's a win emotionally and spiritually. Again, I'm going to take 5 minutes to try and meditate, right? Or I'm gonna read, a verse out of the Bible if that's what you believe. Again, that's a win for you spiritually. And so rack up those small wins, create those small habits, just start with something, and then let that ripple and magnify over time, and you get to where you ultimately want to be. So again, don't use us necessarily as a measuring stick for what you should be doing. Like, as soon as you hear this podcast and you go and jump into it, like, please don't. I wouldn't advise that on anybody at all. But hopefully you find value in the examples that we're sharing, and it sparks something. And maybe something we said says, then I like watching history stuff too. Maybe I did I got away from that, right? Or I do actually like doing CrossFit. I was doing that for a little minute, and I got away from it because all the COVID stuff and shut down. Like, maybe there's something I can do in my home, right? It's maybe you've heard something from us. The goal is to give you the encouragement, to give you the examples, to give you the support, to say just do something regardless of the size. Do it.
Yeah, and ultimately within all of those things is remembering, again, from a leadership perspective, you have to be able to take care of yourself in order to be able to take care of the people that you're entrusted with. And these are 4 areas that if you focus on those things, you're going to be much, much more ahead of the game and giving yourself a better opportunity to do just that.
So funny enough, actually, I'm thinking about these 4 areas you called out, and I try to find like ways, like, in our conversation to tie it back to how we started off. So funny enough, when they talked to Tyson about what has him in the space to want to tackle the Legends League now, because if you've listened to any of the podcasts, he talks very openly and vulnerably about where he was mentally when he was at his peak physically, and how he was not in a healthy space mentally or emotionally by any stretch of the imagination when he was at his peak physically. And it tears him up inside, because part of the reason why he got away from the sport, which he is like obsessive about, he loves it, like he's a student of the game, right? But part of the reason why he got away from the sport was because he didn't feel like he could be in the right place spiritually, mentally, and emotionally to be able to partake in the physical component, right, and have it all aligned. And so he did a lot of work in order to sharpen himself mentally, to sharpen himself emotionally, to sharpen himself spiritually, so that he could get to the point where he could get back to the physical component. And what is exciting and kind of a little bit terrifying, but also a little bit of a bummer, the fact that he's not going for knockouts, is when you hear him talk about it, is this is the first point in his life at almost 60 years old. Mike Tyson, I think, is 54. First point in his life where he's sharp in all 4 areas. He says, hey, I am at the peak mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally in a way that I've never been before in my life. And you can obviously see that. Obviously, physically, you can see that with the eyes and see the shape that he's in. But I would say when you see him, when you hear him talk, and when you just see his energy, his aura, you can tell mentally and emotionally and spiritually, he's in one of the best places that he's ever been. And so it's good to see, kind of somebody, that, a lot of folks idolize and kind of hold up there as a legend in terms of sports and the peak of physical success, acknowledge the fact that not being sharp in those other areas really hindered him from even being greater than whatever he was as a youth. And now that he's finally found alignment, he is in the best shape in all four categories he's ever been. And that's awesome to see.
Yeah. That's a perfect way, man, to kind of put a bow, wrap everything up on this episode. So, Iron Mike, the comeback is real. The comeback is real. Um, the last thing I will say is, at 53, 54, physically, he's not going to be as sharp necessarily as he was in his 20s. Just no way, right? But I think when you watch those videos and you see how fast and still how powerful he is, I think not knowing what you just explained to me and to our listeners is that how important those things even feed you physically. When mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, like, it just puts you in a different spot, that your confidence level is so much higher. You know what I mean? And you can take advantage of the physical aspects and some of the things that you were blessed with even more. So, good word again, good way to kind of put a bow on the episode, man. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing, because I didn't know that piece about Iron Mike. So I'm excited about that coming up, as well as I'm excited about just continuing this journey. We thank everybody for the support that you're showing, and continue to ride this journey with us. And we hope that our legacy leaders are really getting some valuable information, and that's our goal. Is we just want to be able to add value to your life, add value to what you're doing in the workplace. And again, if you're just starting off as a leader, I know there's going to be a lot of things that you can pick up on and start to implement right away. If you're a seasoned vet, hopefully we remind you of some things, or even give you a different spin or a different way to look at things that hopefully makes an impact in your life and in the space that you're leading in right now too. So continue to like, to download the episodes. We're very excited. We just shared this on social media as well. We've reached over 500 downloads on all podcast platforms. We're right now somewhere around 285 views on YouTube. So again, we're really excited about just the progress, because for us, it just shows that, again, people are appreciating the content and what we're doing, and that emotionally, and mentally, that it feeds us, right? The mental game that we're going through to produce this, that kind of feeds some of that emotional aspect, as well as just being able to have these conversations with you as well, man. I appreciate what you said earlier, because that is true. These moments, again, it's a bright spot in my day, challenging ourselves with the conversation, just being able to chop it up about the family, what's going on in the workplace, and going through these conversations. So again, continue to share, like us on Facebook. You can definitely find us there at Legacy and Leadership Podcast. You can find us on Instagram as well, and on Twitter at Legacy Leadership. So follow us on all those social media platforms. We'll continue to share snippets and clips of the podcast, but we're also, we want to continue to share just other information and positive things that we hope will help you along the way as well. So please continue to pay attention for that, and give us some feedback. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, and but more importantly, some of the things that are really kind of adding that value and are really meaning something to you. So we know that we're on the right path, and we can continue to give you guys what you need. Again, we're trying to bring you that goodness with the Legacy and Leadership Podcast. So our hope is our desire is to continue to drop that for you guys every week. So really excited about next week's episode as well. We have in a couple of weeks. So we'll continue to kind of dive into these different topics. But also looking forward to in a couple of weeks, as we get ready for the next installment of our Mentored by Adversity series. Looking forward to the guests that we're going to have on there. I'm not going to say anything yet. Just want to make sure that we're completely solidified in that. But yeah, excited about where we're headed. So Yeah, I appreciate you, Devon, for the conversations and for what you share. And I appreciate our listeners out there for sticking with us and again, riding this ride with us. We appreciate you guys very much. This is episode 6, right? Are we on
Yeah,
episode
well,
6?
that's right.
We
Episode
were
6.
laughing at that earlier. Like we kind of forget where we're at right now. But yeah, next week is the 007. It's going to be our James Bond episode. So
Oh, nice.
be on the lookout for that.
I like that James Bond episode. That's dope.
So thank you, everybody. Take care. God bless and stay encouraged.
Absolutely.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, hosted by Jimmy Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you live, lead, and leave a legacy worth remembering. Until next time.